Hey folks, this is Chris with Oregon Figs. It's February 21st, 2023, and I was just asked about my potting mix that I use for uppotting from tree pots, the 4x9-inch tree pots, to 7-gallon injection molded pots. And this is my mix. This is these are the ratios. So this is just standard peat, Canadian sphagnum peat moss. I use 2 gallons of this. This is the potting mix I'm using today. It comes up to just under 10 gallons. So I'm going to call it 10 gallons. This is the bark that I use. It's called fir pebble bark. I use 10 gallons of that. So the same ratio, potting mix to the pellets. Now, if you're in the East, you're probably going to have access to pine bark pellets, which I actually think might be better because they're a little more chunky, and that's what's available to you. Not available to us out here. This is easily available because this is just as they're processing the fir trees, they're taking the bark off and they're running it through a chipper and chipping it down to a small size. Works great. It reduces the price of your mix because I get it by the cubic yard. It's right around $30 a cubic yard. So that's a lot of material. I use it as I'm planting, and I use it in the top 4 to 6 inches of the soil around my trees when I plant in ground to increase the porosity so that I can water with a hose and deep water my trees in ground. This is another component I use here. It's dolomite lime. And I use 4 cups of this, and it's real fine, kind of like it's got some grit in it, but it's almost like a flour. I use that. Then I use 2 gallons of perlite. Doesn't really matter what your brand is. This is kind of a medium perlite. Chunky is fine as well. I think the small is a little bit too small. This is Cascade volcanic rock dust, and I use 4 cups of this, and it's once again really fine as well. This came off of a rock crusher up by Diamond Lake, which is near Crater Lake. My son was running a crusher up there, crushing gravel for Forest Service roads, and he brought me down several 5-gallon buckets of this. And I use it when I'm planting in ground, and I also use it as I'm doing my potting mix for the trace minerals. So that's pretty much the mix. You've got 4 cups of rock dust. You've got 4 cups of dolomite lime. You've got 2 gallons of perlite. You've got 2 gallons of just peat moss. This is pretty fine stuff. You've got 10 gallons of your bark mix, whether it's pine or fir, doesn't really matter. And you've got 10 gallons of potting soil. This stuff has become very expensive over the last couple of years, so it's nice to take some of the ingredients like peat and like the bark, which is less expensive, to kind of stretch it out a little bit. And it works really well. This will, the peat will hold the moisture, but it is somewhat hydrophobic. So you have to water slowly. You don't want to just water a lot at once. It'll run right through the pot, so you water incrementally. The perlite adds to the drainage, so that gives porosity to the mix. Once again, the rock dust is for trace minerals. The lime is to adjust the pH a bit because the bark makes it a bit acidic. So this will adjust it back to a place where figs like it. Now here's the secret component, the rock star cement mixer. So I mix this up in a cement mixer. Right there I've got, that's 5 gallons of the bark, and I've put in the lime, and I've put in the rock dust. And I always use just inexpensive gloves when I'm working with it. and I'll grab it as I'm adding it, and I'll pull it from the back to the front, then put in another component, mix it up, do the same thing, kind of mix it up. And then when I'm getting it and pulling it out into my 5-gallon buckets, I'll pull from the back, pull right out to the front. And this will fill up 4 5-gallon buckets, my mix. So it's 20 gallons. And excuse the noise, this will be a bit noisy. So this is a lazy way to do it, but it really does work nicely. Just mixes it up. And that's it. I kind of stage everything, get the mix ready, pull the mix out, and from here it goes into my truck in the 4 or 5-gallon buckets up to my second location where I'm doing my up potting of the figs. And I won't be doing too much more up potting because I've stopped rooting cuttings, and I've pretty much cut my pots in half this year. From 103, I've cut them in about half. Planted a bunch of trees in ground this year and spaced them with a new spacing, and that's another video for another day. Part of the reason why I increased the spacing is because this mower with a 54-inch cut, and it has the chute which goes out about another foot. So it has a wide diameter. I needed to make it so we could do a cut around the trees with a 0-turn mower. And this is a fantastic mower, the bad boy. Truly is a bad boy. It's made me readjust the way I'm planting trees, and it's actually been serendipitous because I was planting them too close, and this forced me to plant them further apart. So that's the mix. Like I say, you don't have to follow everything exact. Pine bark versus fir. Pine is maybe even better because it's a little chunkier. Peat is rather inexpensive, and it stretches it out just like the pine bark or the fir pebbles do. The potting mix is expensive. That's why I want to stretch that out. And then once again, the lime to adjust the pH in a more favorable light. The perlite for porosity, and the rock dust for trace minerals. That's my mix. And that's my secret weapon. Okay, you guys have a great day. Next video, I'm thinking, should be about the orchard. I put a lot of work in the orchard. The orchard has doubled in size. Really exciting. A lot of early Pons varieties and early varieties in general, and a lot of Brava crop varieties. So really focusing in on what works well here in the Northwest and cooler climates. Okay, thanks. Hey, feel free to subscribe and like.